Let's start with our meeting now. We have a real special one today. We have Commissioner Sid Leiken, who everybody knows, and Lydia McKinney, who's the transportation planner for Lane County. And we're real happy that they're here, and they're going to be explaining, obviously, the vehicle registration fee, and so we can have a little bit better understanding. So I'd like to introduce them, have them take over the meeting.
First of all, thank you for the invitation. Very much appreciated. And Lydia and I have been doing a few of these together and doing what we call the road tour. And really talking about the vehicle registration fee, why the Lane County Board of Commissioners made the decision to vote and refer it to the public. I think that's the key here. Is we actually legally, we could have just voted for this and just been finished with it, but my guess is it would have probably been referred anyway. So we actually decided to refer this so that you as a public ultimately could make the decision. So why the vehicle registration fee? Well, Lydia's going to provide a presentation here in just a little bit and give you the reason why we landed on this. But what I want to do quickly, and with this group in particular, I probably don't have to go into too much detail. As you know, Lane County is described as a timber county. So over the years, we've received significant timber payments. In fact, Lane County and Douglas County, based on the old way when you harvested from the public lands, both the BLM managed lands, which are the ONC lands, U.S. Forest Service lands, Douglas County and Lane County were number 1 and 2 in receiving revenue out of any two counties in the United States, based on the harvest of our public lands. So Lane County is actually owned by, the federal government owns 54% of Lane County. ONC lands, that's probably what you see more in the news than anything else. ONC lands are actually, they're pretty unique, managed by the BLM, but those dollars go directly into our general fund. So the sheriff's office, the assessors, the administrative costs. U.S. Forest Service lands, when that's harvested, that goes directly into the road fund. And during the years, what I call the glory years, which were decades, Lane County was literally receiving about $20 million annually on the harvesting of those public lands and U.S. Forest Service lands, so it goes straight into our road funds. So you look at Lane County, roughly the size of the state of Connecticut. Lydia will go over the, how many miles or road miles. And actually, she's going to give you a number that's pretty, I was actually surprised when I saw it, on how many bridges Lane County has to maintain. So county bridges. By the way, Lane County has more county bridges than any other county in the state of Oregon. And you'll see the number, so we have to maintain those. So what has happened is that because the spotted owl issue, those revenues declined. Then in the year 2000, Senator Wyden actually authored a bill called the Secure School Self-Determination Act, SRS, we'll just call it that. And during that time, it's based on historical levels of harvest. So Lane County were receiving dollars into the general fund and over $20 million into the road fund for a period of 2000 and 2006. It's reauthorized at a level that was less. Since that time, they've been reauthorizing it basically in an annually at 95% what it was the year before. So what happened is that you go from $20 million a year. This year, Congress just passed, they just passed the Medicare Doc Fix-It bill, which had the attachment, overwhelmingly. It's a huge vote, both the House and the Senate. That number will be about $6.5 million that will come back to Lane County. Without that, if it was based on harvest, that would have been $600,000. So the last year that Lane County's budget was based on actual harvest was the 89-90 budget. Now I'm going to save you going to your CPI calculators here for a moment, because that number that came back to Lane County based on harvest and the road funds was a little over $20 million. In today's dollars, that's $38 million. So today's dollars, index for inflation, $38,600,000. So, I mean, Commissioner Stewart and I have been talking about, gosh, if they just went and maintained with the Northwest Forest Plan that was adopted 20 years ago, we may be doing cartwheels, because that would probably be roughly about $8 to $10 million coming into our road fund on an annual basis. Probably more than that. Because Northwest Forest Plan actually guaranteed there would be 1.2 billion board feet that would be harvested off of public lands. that number is actually between 200 and 300 million board feet. So based on the historical levels, where we are today, it's less. So we've had to rely on Congress to say, okay, if you're not going to harvest, you at least need to pay us those dollars. So that's the reason why we're here today, is because if you look at those levels, the budget that we've had in the past, what we've had to use just to maintain and throughout the county. And again, I want to emphasize, Lane County is a large county. And with the amount of miles that we have and with the bridges, it takes a significant amount of dollars to maintain that road. Lydia will go over basically what the asset is, the dollar amount to the asset, because it's truly an asset for us. It's our transportation infrastructure, it's our economic development engine throughout the county. So at this time I'm going to have Lydia go over the presentation, and then afterwards we're more than happy to entertain questions and answers. So Lydia McKinney, she's actually our transportation planning manager at Lane County, and take it away, Lydia.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Leiken, and thanks again for having us here today. One thing that I'll note, staff at Lane County can provide information about this measure. We can't advocate for or against that, so that's not my role here today. The commissioners have more flexibility in how they present the information. But what I want to talk about is, again, as Sid said, why we're here today. We start with what our goal is, and as public servants, our main goal is protecting public health and safety. And roads are no exception. That is our primary issue. We'll talk about the funding issue in a little bit more detail. Again, how did we get here? Why are we here today? Proposing a vehicle registration fee. We'll cover some of the frequently asked questions, but again, as Sid said, what we'd like to be able to do is take your questions. So again, to start, our goal really is to provide a safe road system. And when we think about roadside safety, we think about a lot of things. There's making sure that the roads are open, accessible, so that police and fire can get to us when we need, that snow and ice is removed, that landslide debris is removed. The roads have good surfaces, so people can use the roads as they're designed. They're not going around potholes or trying to avoid ruts in the road, that they have striping so that you can see where the road edges are, where the curves in the road are. All of these things make up roadside safety. So what is our asset? We actually calculate roughly a $6 billion asset because, like Sid said, we have a state almost the size of Connecticut. We have 417 bridges in Lane County. It's a lot of bridges. 1,400 miles of road, and that's miles of road. A lot of places talk about lane miles. That would be double that number. And then we have several signs, we have a striping program. Again, all of those things are components of our transportation system. And we have, I think, a really good transportation system. One of the things that we hear from people is, why do you need money in Lane County? Your roads are really in pretty good shape, and they are. Primarily that is because we received this, first we had the timber harvest money, and then we had the secure rural schools that replaced it, that allowed us to build and maintain this excellent road system. Not only did Lane County receive money from the secure rural schools, but we chose to give the cities money from that pot. So we would give the cities up to $5 million a year for their road funds. And Commissioner Leiken will tell you that when he was the mayor of Springfield, those dollars coming into the Springfield road budget allowed them to have zero backlog, which is unheard of today. So those federal timber harvests have declined significantly. Now what this shows is in 07-08 we received about $22 million in secure rural schools payments. This shows what we were anticipating and that we based our budget on this year. We did not know that secure rural schools was going to be approved. That came in at the last minute. So we were actually budgeting for actual timber harvest, and that's the $600,000. That represents the 97% decrease. Now again, secure rural schools has been reauthorized for 2 years. That does not address our ongoing need for maintenance and preservation, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But what I will say is my understanding that the secure rural schools money that is coming into the county will be used to pay down some of the debt in the road fund. So that will free up a little bit of money, about $400,000, that we can use for ongoing maintenance needs. But again, primarily we're really in this funding situation where we don't have the money we need to preserve and maintain our roads safely. I also want to remind ourselves that there's 2 things that make up our road fund. One is those federal forest payments, the secure rural schools we were talking about. And the second is the state highway fund. So the state highway fund is made up of gas taxes. When we fuel our vehicles, we pay a gas tax. That goes about 50% of the highway fund. Registration fees, again, we own vehicles, register our vehicles with the state. Then there's this thing called the weight mile tax. And so in Oregon, we're pretty unique that we require trucks pay their fair share. And so that additional fee, trucks pay a very high registration fee, much higher than our $43 a year, and they pay this weight mile tax. So when we've looked at comparisons between passenger vehicles and trucks, passenger vehicles, we pay $43 a year. Trucks pay roughly $12,000 a year. So some people are really concerned that we're not out there charging the trucks. One of the reasons is we can't, but it's also because we have this program in our state that the trucks pay their fair share. So what is our budget issue here? Our expenses are going up mostly because of inflation and cost increase over time. We're not out there building new roads. And again, our revenues have significantly fallen because of that slide that I showed you before. So that we have a $9 million budget gap, and we've been filling that gap with money from our reserves. We're really at the point where we don't have those reserves to keep. You want to know that we have known about this issue for a number of years. The Secure Rule Schools gets reauthorized every couple of years, but it's been 8 or 10 years since we've had that as a secure funding source. So we have been trying to plan for that. We have had a 35% staff reduction in Lane County Public Works since the year 2000. We've had a reduction in our reserves, again, to make up that gap since 2000. We've done a lot of department reorganization and consolidation. My department keeps getting smaller and smaller. We keep trying to do the same work, but that is just a fact of where we are at Lane County. We use innovative technologies where we can. We're very proud of the fact that we have the only materials lab in the state, and that goes out and tests roads and makes sure that the materials that are being used to build our roads are in good shape. They've developed some new ways of preserving roads that are more cost-effective, more durable. The city of Eugene has now used those types of materials. We see grants that, we used to be, again, people giving money away to the cities. Now we are with the cities and other agencies at the table trying to compete for grants. And again, it's just we need to look for all of those opportunities to be able to fund our road system. But despite all of these corrective actions that we've taken over the past several years, we're really at this point today that the commissioners and our county administrator call the tipping point. We don't have the ability to keep taking from our reserves because they're becoming depleted. And without cutting services significantly, we just don't have the money to continue doing the maintenance and preservation that we have. One of the things that we really want to emphasize is, again, Lane County roads are generally in good shape. And one of the reasons for this is the county has invested in preservation of the asset. So we do things like slurry seals, chip seals, that are inexpensive ways to protect the road system. We can invest roughly $1 per square foot in those types of pavement preservation programs. Once you see little cracks in the road, alligator cracking, potholes, you can't use those kinds of preservation treatments. You have to do full road reconstruction. And then you're spending $12 a square foot. So it's just like any other asset. Our homes, we want to take care of our roofs. Our cars, we want to change the oil every 3,000 miles rather than waiting for our engine to collapse and getting a new engine. So again, it's that preventative maintenance that we want to continue to be able to invest in. So again, we have been projecting this shortfall for a number of years. So in 2010, our Public Works Director directed staff to create a Revenue Options Committee. And that committee generated 28 potential options for additional revenue to come into our road fund. Those 28 options were narrowed down when the board this summer directed staff to go back to our Roads Advisory Committee, that's our citizen committee, and ask that committee to analyze what the best options for the board would be to consider. And so we took the top 7 to the Roads Advisory Committee this summer for there, and they had detailed discussions and analysis on these different options. The one on the top, our grant writer, that's something we actually were able to implement in 2012, so we do have a person who writes grants for Lane County now, and has been able to bring in a couple $1 million for road and park projects. Some some of these other options I can talk about in the question and answer in detail if you'd like. What I will note is one of the questions we get is why don't you consider a gas tax? And we did consider a gas tax. There's a lot of challenges with the gas tax. First, for Lane County to apply a gas tax in unincorporated Lane County would only generate about $1.5 million a year. And again, our need is $9 million. If we wanted to apply it within the city limits as well, then we have to negotiate with the cities because 5 of the cities already have a gas tax. There's limitations on how much we can raise a gas tax. So that was something our city partners weren't particularly keen on. And also we know we've been told that if we pursue a gas tax, we will be aggressively lobbied against at the state level. And we really want to be able to invest our time and energy in something we think we have a reasonable chance of succeeding with. So that brings us to the vehicle registration fee. The Roads Advisory Committee did unanimously recommend to the board to consider a vehicle registration fee, and after several discussions with the board unanimously recommended placing the vehicle registration fee on the ballot. So why was the Roads Advisory Committee and the board comfortable with considering this vehicle registration fee? Well, there's a number of reasons why. One is, it is a regional solution. So one of the things the board said to us is, we know Lane County's hurting, but we also know that our agency partners, the cities, are hurting as well. They have less road fund dollars. Some people might notice that in cities, Eugene and Springfield, they have some street problems as well. With a vehicle registration fee, 40% of the dollars collected go directly to the cities by state law. So we would receive 60% of the funds. It would generate $11 million a year, and I'll talk in a few minutes about the details. And again, 60% goes to the county, 40% goes to the city. So the city of Eugene would receive $2.6 million annually, the city of Springfield over $1 million annually. And again, it goes to all 12 cities in unincorporated in Lane County based on the population. It's a stable funding source when compared to things like the gas tax. Actually, gas tax is a lowering source of revenue. This is for a number of different reasons. We have standards that require that our vehicles are more efficient. Some people have moved to alternative fuel vehicles. They don't pay any gas tax, obviously. And people are driving less. Our kids, Sid tells me his kids are the exception to this, but kids in America are driving less. It is a national trend. And so we are seeing the gas tax as something that's not a sustainable funding source. One of the things that's very important to people that we talk to is to understand that vehicle registration fee dollars are dedicated to road use only. The county cannot use them to fund the sheriff patrol. The city cannot use it to fund Civic Stadium. Those dollars have to be spent on roads. The board has specified that the money that we get, if this passes in May, we'll use only for maintenance and preservation, because again, that's our need. We're not proposing to build new roads. We want to preserve the asset we have. The city of Eugene, for instance, has the ability to use the money, not necessarily on maintenance and preservation, if they wanted to do new road projects, if they wanted to do different types of improvements to their road system. Again, it's limited to road purposes only, so they have that limitation as well. Another very important piece of the vehicle registration fee is this ease of administration. And what that means is there's currently a system in place to collect the money. With a lot of the other options out there, you would have to develop a way to collect. You'd have to create a tax in the retail centers, and it costs almost as much money to collect the fee as you would generate. With the vehicle registration fee, again, the state currently collects our registration fees when we renew our registration every 2 years, and they would administer this program for us. So it's very cost effective for the county. Of the $11.5 million that would be generated, the state estimates it would be about $80,000 a year. So that's less than 1% of the money generated to administer it. So that's a big advantage. So what exactly is it that we're talking about here? It's proposed to be a $35 a year fee on passenger vehicles. So to be clear, we generally register our vehicles every 2 years. They come up for renewal. So that would be $70 for every 2 years. The board could have imposed, as Commissioner Leiken said, they have the authority. They didn't want to do that. They wanted this to be a public conversation. We could have gone up to $43. We didn't do that. Now, those of you who are quick with the math will figure, well, 60% of $11 million, that's about 6 million bucks, what about the $9 million gap that we need? We could use more money. The reason we didn't go up higher, the maximum we can do is 43, that's what the state charges, we can't go higher, is because we did some pretty sophisticated research and analysis and polling to find out what people were willing to consider in terms of what would be a modest increase. And what the polling found is that over 60% of the people are willing to pay a modest increase to continue to maintain safe roads and bridges. $43 was not seen as modest. People felt that that was too much. The $35, we landed there because that's what the data showed us we would have the best chance of success with. So if we generate this money, what does that mean? Well, again, it means that we'll be bringing in $11 million into Lane County to maintain our roads, bridges. It means that 40% of that money goes to the cities and they can use that for their road projects. It saves us money as a county, which ultimately saves the taxpayer dollars, but it also saves money for those of us in our own pockets who drive vehicles. ODOT just did a study looking at the difference between driving a medium-sized sedan on very rough roads compared to driving that medium-sized sedan on smooth roads. It costs $400 a year more if you're driving on rough roads because of increased gas costs, increased maintenance, having to realign your vehicle, those types of things. So it will also translate into dollars coming back to us. Again, it's a shared solution. This is something that we've gone out and spoken with the cities with. Most of the cities have been highly supportive of us doing this, again, because it does generate funds for them to be able to use for their roads. And just quickly, I've mentioned this already, but Eugene would get over $2.6 million, Springfield over $1 million. Our smallest city is West Fir, generates only about $4,300. But again, if you consider the size of West Fir as compared to the city of Eugene, that does make some sense. So I've talked about the gas tax, I think, and I've talked about trucks. Again, we get that question. Why aren't you guys out there taxing the trucks? They're the ones that really are damaging the roads. It's because, A, we can't, state law prohibits it, but again, the trucks are already paying their fair share through the weight mile tax. What about studded tires, right? Those studded tires, people out there damaging our roads with studded tires. I'm not going to argue that studded tires are not bad for our roads. They are. But it's one of those things where there's no collection method, so we'd have to charge, get Lane County retailers to charge more for tires and then send the money to Lane County. Again, that doesn't make much sense in terms of administration. Only 4% of cars have studded tires, so it's, again, a pretty small amount of money that we can generate. And we will continue to support the state in their efforts to address studded tires. Public trust, again, very, very important. So as I mentioned, constitutionally, the vehicle registration fee dollars are limited to the roads. But the board wanted to go further to make sure that we could demonstrate to the public that the promises we're making we will keep. And so the way that they want to do that is, if it's passed, we will have an annual audit, and we will also have an annual review by our Citizens Advisory Committee. This is the way that the Lane County Board has dealt with the sheriff's levy, which was passed a few years ago. And they just had the annual audit for the sheriff's levy, where they were able to demonstrate all those dollars that were generated were used exactly as they were proposed to be used. And we would do the same thing with the vehicle registration fee. Now, what's really important to understand as well is that if we do the vehicle registration fee, we have to do it exactly like the state. So what that means is, if you're exempted currently from the state vehicle registration fee because you have a disabled veteran vehicle, because you have an antique vehicle, farm vehicles, there are some vehicles that are currently exempt. The board does not have the ability to exempt anything else. People have asked us, I have multiple vehicles, can't you do something to make it less burdensome on me? Or what about low-income folks, that this $35 a year really could be a financial challenge? I think the board was really frustrated because they would have liked to be able to make some of those exceptions. But again, the state law says if you do the vehicle registration fee, it has to be applied exactly like the state. By the way, RVs, travel trailers, those are exempt from registration fees. They do pay some fees, but that goes into the state park system. So motorhomes, travel trailers would not pay a vehicle registration fee. So another question we get is, okay, if you pass the vehicle registration fee, what exactly will the county do with the money? And we have a website that I encourage you to go look at. It's pretty cool. Believe it or not, it really is. And it shows some of the things that we would be able to do if we pass the fee. Things like continuing to be able to do 24-hour snow and ice response. Continuing to be able to do 24-hour removal of trees and debris that falls on the road. If we don't pass the vehicle registration fee, we won't be able to continue that on a 24/7. Where it really will impact us is where we have those long storms. So we just will have more gaps in time before we can get out to the roads. There are projects and services. Again, if you go to our website, we have these storyboards that will show you where the projects are that we're thinking, what kind of projects we would be able to implement with the passage of the vehicle registration fee. Again, this is annual striping of roads. We currently stripe our roads annually. If we don't pass the fee, we'll have to go to every 3 years on some of our roads. Invasive vegetation on the sides of the road, something we might not think about, but if we don't have somebody out there a couple times a year cutting down the vegetation for the guardrails and road edges, it's Oregon, right? It's green, things grow fast, and you start getting that vegetation encroaching into the road and causing challenges again for safety. The Waymaster program, we currently have a Waymaster program, and those are the folks out there making sure those trucks are accurate in their loads. That program would not be able to continue without the registration fee. So those are just some of the examples. Again, we have some handouts we'll give you which has the website. We'd encourage you to look at that. Really what's next is we're continuing, as Sid said, we're on this road tour. And if you know of anyone who would like us to come and speak, let us know. We have information on our website. But the other thing is that the board wanted to make sure that everyone had information, so we will be sending out a voters pamphlet. You will be receiving that about 3 weeks before the May 19th election. We will be doing some informational ads on the radio. There will be some flyers that we'll be mailing out as well. So I'm going to close there. Do you have any comments? Did I miss anything?
No, you didn't miss anything at all. And the only thing I'll add is this. I will assure you the Lane County Board of Commissioners did not want to go down this road at all. We did not want to. If it was up to me, if I was king for a day, we would have passed a comprehensive forest management bill and opened our federal public lands to forest management. And for reasons beyond this, I mean, just the safety issue, the forest fire issue, so on and so forth, we would have much rather gone that route. Unfortunately, we worked with our congressional delegation to give it a shot, but unfortunately, it wasn't to be had. So this is where we are today, and I don't view this as we're coming to you as a scare tactic or anything else. What we're trying to do is present. This is exactly what's going on here at Lane County, and we're going to try to be as direct and upfront with you as we possibly can. So, questions? And look at them all go up. So Bill was first. I know that. So.
All right. So, is there any kind of a sunset built into this? Suppose something miraculous happens and the electorate actually regains its sanity, and we are actually able to accomplish what you just talked about. Are we stuck with this forever?
No, there's not a sunset built into it, but what we did build into it is this, that the $35 is up to $35. And meaning this, we were actually, because I worked on this from a personal standpoint, is I worked with a group called the Oregon Transportation Forum, and what we did is we actually developed a potential transportation package for the state legislature. This would have been new revenue for counties, local governments, that would have come in. Because Lydia showed you that basically what we're receiving now, besides the SRS, is what comes from the state and what's collected from the state. So we're one of 36 counties that we share 30% of all that revenue that comes back. And so we worked on a robust package. We put it together. It was, I mean, the group itself was very diverse, but the issue that we knew that was coming, and the Republicans, even though they're a minority, had mentioned that if you pass low carbon fuel standard bill, we will not support a transportation package. They went ahead and moved forward on it. It's already been signed. The transportation package is now dead. So if additional revenue would have come in, this is something that Commissioner Bozovich actually talked about a lot. that we specifically built the up to $35 because if additional revenue would have been coming in, we could have had that choice of saying, okay, maybe we can scale this down to 20 and that type of thing. So no sunset, but we did, in order for it to ever go up past $35, it'd actually have to be amended. And I think we have to go back out to the public if we ever wanted to increase that. So no sunset. Hi, Darlene.
Yeah. How is this going to be collected? Is this going to be with our vehicle registration? Because if we only pay that every 2 years, so are we going to be assessed like $70 then?
70 on top of what you already paid. That's correct. For 2 years. So it's already collected by the state, so there's not an administrative cost that Lane County has to deal with. So I have Paul and then Duncan.
I'm a Eugene voter, and I've been on the Eugene Street Repair Review Committee for 6 years.
Yep.
So everything you've got to say, I'm familiar with about Slurry Sills and alligatoring and the cost of rebuilding from the bottom. The problem is, 5 years ago, the city of Eugene passed a bond issue, and we passed it a second time. So there's still a backlog in Eugene, but Eugene is manageable. So what you've done now is you've come along and said, we've got to pay an extra amount. If I vote for this, and I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do, it's only because I like Sid Leiken. And I'm glad to have and Jay and Pat on the council, on the commission, rather than Kevin Matthews and the crew we used to have out there. So it'll be for that reason. But I think you got a real problem with Eugene because we're already paying. We paid on a bond issue. That's what it is.
And one thing, you're absolutely right. Eugene has had 2 successful bonds. Street bond dollars can be used for capital only. So Eugene actually can't use those dollars for maintenance, for slurry seals, for those types of things.
We use them for slurry seal all the time.
Well, I think the specific bond dollars are used for the reconstruction of roads, and then the road fund dollars might be used for slurry seal. So our understanding from Kurt Corey, the Public Works Director of the City of Eugene, is there is a backlog of maintenance needs. They do have a need to be able to preserve those roads that they are rebuilding. So that's my understanding from the Public Works Director.
So my first term as mayor, and I think Lydia had mentioned this, so my first term as mayor, when the road funds were coming into Lane County used to share with the cities. They used to take $5 million off the top and share with the cities. So Springfield was receiving $1.2 million then, my first term, so 2000 to 2004. And Eugene was about $2.8 million. So basically, what's going to happen here, based on, again, state law, is that Eugene then will start receiving $2.6 million going towards their operation and maintenance likely. And then Springfield back up a little bit over $1 million going to operation and maintenance as well. So it's really to maintain the asset that you have built in. And I would agree, Paul. I mean, what I have found out even in Springfield is that people really are saying, do I want to pay this? Well, and I remind folks, because I've talked to a lot of folks who have moved here from California, and I said, what did you pay in 1982 for 1 year? And, it really is a bargain if you really sit and think about it. What it comes down to is if you can not buy 1 latte a month, you're paying for this. Literally, it's $3. And that's really what it comes down to. So, but Paul, thank you for your kind words. I do appreciate it, and it's very nice of you. So, Duncan?
Lydia, I think you covered this, but I'm going to ask you to repeat yourself. You have a $9 million shortfall, and you're looking for an $11 million source of revenue. What accounts for the difference? And I would also like to know who did your research.
Sure. Well, so remember that $11 million that's generated, the county only gets 60% of that. So we get $6 million, $6.5 million. So that still leaves a budget gap for the county. Is that your question?
Okay, thank you, yeah.
So again, we don't get the 11, we get 6.5. So Lane County continues to have a budget gap. What we're doing, we have 3 budgets really that we're preparing this year. The long story short is that even with SRS, even if we pass the vehicle registration fee, we still are making staff cuts at Lane County. Those cuts, while unfortunate, will reduce those ongoing costs. So we'll start to be able to bridge that $3 million gap.
And-
Did you have a second question?
And it was
Oh,
the, so Dr. Manross, and so Dr. Manross actually did the survey and the polling for the public safety levy as well.
Thank you.
And he was off by 1. He actually said it would pass with 58%, it passed with 57. So he's actually, we found him to be extremely, very reasonable. He actually used to be, he's lived up here, he knows Oregon and Lane County quite well, even though he's now based in California, but we have found that he's very reasonable. And I want to add one more piece to that, because Duncan, I think you bring up something that's important that Lydia had mentioned about the staff reductions and so on and so forth. So I know when Jay and I were first elected in 2011, and neither one of us spoke to each other about this, but it turns out we said the same thing to the department heads, and we basically said, we hope you have a strike plan in place because you may use it. And part of that is we have an expectation that we've got to get Lane County back from a fiscal standpoint, be a little bit more focused than what had happened previously. So I can tell you right now, the budget before I was elected was $600 million. 2 years later, it was $460 million. So we have cut 20% across the board. We also asked our administrator at the time, you need to consolidate, you need to work towards that. We went from 14 departments down to 9, 7 healthcare plans down to 2, and literally saved the county millions and millions of dollars just by basically taking more of a business approach and realizing that, hey, you know, there's folks who make a pretty good living and we're going to be pink slipping. And, you know, unfortunately, I spent many years in the private sector. I had to do that myself, and it's never a fun thing to do. But I think where we are today, I think Lane County as a whole is pretty stable. And yes, we do wish, you know, wish in one hand, you know what to do in the other, and see what fills up the fastest. But we do wish that Congress and our what I call our federal and our state partners would actually be a little bit more collaborative with your local partners. Because like I said before, I wish we would never had to go down this road, but kind of left without a lot of choices. Good work.
What concerns me about this a little bit is that, especially the young families that have 2 cars, for like most, I imagine most of us here, it'll be a little bit, but for families that have 2 cars, a minivan and a pickup, and they're struggling, because I remember what it was like when I was 25 and 30. That's what concerns me about this, because I want to give them help. And is there any provision? It evidently isn't any provision.
No, there isn't, unfortunately. But you know, you bring up probably one of the most valid questions, and you are correct. What I can say is that because as a commissioner, I'm not just focused on the vehicle registration fee. I'm also trying to be focused on creating more opportunity, creating more business opportunities for people to come into Lane County, to create more wealth, so that our young families don't feel like they're going to be struggling. Continue to struggle. So, and this is, remember, maintaining our system, our transportation system, this is one of the most significant economic development tools you're going to have in your communities, whether it's Lane County, whether it's the cities. You need to have a strong infrastructure in place, because there's a lot of folks, believe it or not, who live on the coast and travel here, and they need to have those roads available so they can continue to travel to come to work. It's a valid question. And you're right, by state law, we do not have that ability to scale it or index it or anything else. It is what we call a flat fee. Okay.
You didn't have the option of using a levy or something like that, because the levy's tax deductible. So.
We could have. Levy, though, is 5 years, and you have to renew it. This is, in a sense, and Bill asked the question, is there a sunset? And the answer is no. And so, plus this is just more stable. The other piece of the gas tax, and I'll add this, is that actually sit on the road user fee task force statewide. So they're studying a road user fee so it's a 10-state coalition, in a sense, to replace the gas tax. Because the gas tax is doing this. And with the new CAFE standards coming in with the vehicles today, and the miles per gallon, that's going to continue to increase. And you know, who knows how many more people are going to buy Teslas. You know what? They don't pay gas tax, or it's significantly lower, and that's been the primary amount of money that comes in to really fund our road system in the state. So
Those are heavy vehicles, those are.
they are heavy. Yes, they do. They do much damage. They do more damage than the Prius.
Yes, thank you for your explanations of things. I'm wondering, why the RVs, the motorhomes, trailers are exempt?
Good question. They actually do pay, but it goes to the parks, not to ODOT.
Not to both?
No, it goes directly to the parks, and so that money then is shared as well. So, in fact, I just worked on a bill on that one, because it used to be that 65% of all that dollars went to the state park system. By 2016, 45% of those dollars will start going to the county park system. But they pay to the parks and not to ODOT, so that's the reason why.
Two things we look at is the long term. You know, when we got a valuable asset that we have, what's the long-term maintenance of this program? Because we can't look at, you're doing a Band-Aid effect here now in 1 year. 50 years from now, the roads have got to be somewhat the same. So what do we look at for building the whole structure? And the other thing is that when we talk about the loss of revenue, 96 million from the timber tax, we don't talk about the loss of jobs and the income that we show the loss of revenue from the timber, but we don't show the loss of jobs in the community.
Right.
No, and you know, that to me, from our perspective, because we talk about the vehicle registration fee, so we wanted to kind of focus on the fee itself. But no, you're absolutely correct, and you're completely correct. So in the long term, you're right. This is more of a short-term answer, and hopefully what it'll do over the period of time was at least make things stable. The long term, though, whether it's going to be the timber industry, whether it's going to be something else, either you're going to have to do some significant tax reform here in the state of Oregon. You know, I think at this time and place, Oregon as a whole is probably a little bit behind where other states are. And so, you know, that's a topic for another day. But our focus just want to be on the vehicle registration fee. But no, you're correct, absolutely. And this is more of because Lydia showed you, there's still going to be a gap. And until we get some sort of stability coming from Congress, either in lieu of or cut the trees, and it's going to be continue not having to go back to the well every year and beg, which is what I feel like we have to do. By the way, if you ever get a chance, give a big shout out to Congressman Walden. He's the one that took care of this. It was Congressman Walden all the way. And he also, because I texted him and he texted me back and he said, by the way, Peter was there with him. So whether you like DeFazio or not, he was there with Walden, but this was Congressman Walden's baby. He's the one that got this 2-year to us. So if you ever get a chance, say a big thank you to him. Thank you. So Bob, then we'll go back to it.
The money that's going to the cities, that watching commissioner meetings, I've heard that it is restricted, and it isn't restricted, so can you kind of tell me? The city of Eugene, I don't want to see money going to the city of Eugene because they'll spend it for whatever. So is it restricted?
Restricted for the county, but we can't tell the city what to do.
But it is restricted for the cities for road uses only.
On the
So the Oregon
constitutional
Constitution says money from vehicle registration fee can only be used for roads. And that's why I said they can't use it for civic stadium, they can't use it for city hall. They have to use it for roads. We said we're only going to maintain and preserve our roads. If Eugene wants to, you know, build new roads, and like Sid said, we wanted to tell them what to do, but we couldn't.
So that could be for bike paths and whatever.
Well, it has to be on the road right of way. So it couldnn't be it couldn't be like the Willamette River path, because that's not public right of way. It could be on, you know, I hate to say this, but Willamette Street, they could use it for restriping Willamette Street.
And E-Web's property.
No, well, for the roads for EWEB, they couldn't use it for the bike path. That's because again, the bike path off road it's not eligible.
I live in Springfield.
Thanks for letting the voters decide this, but how prepared are you for this to fail?
Oh, I would say that at this point in time, I don't have a good feel for this. I had a pretty good feel for the public safety levy. And I will tell you the reason why is that because we had a political action committee for the public safety levy. It's pretty easy to sell from a political standpoint, public safety, jail beds, putting bad guys away. I will tell you, roads are not sexy.
I don't agree, but...
No, she doesn't. But I would say the everyday person out there, it's really hard to say, gee, this is really important, but yet at the same time, this is about economic development and making sure your communities are vibrant, is to maintain the infrastructure.
And the one thing I'd note is that if it doesn't pass, there will be some, they'll have to do some service cuts and additional staff cuts.
There are a few more now. Steve, how much time we have?
Well, I would like to interrupt briefly and say that it's just 1 o'clock, and so if you need to go someplace and you have to go, it's not rude now to leave.